What's up, everybody? Welcome to Make Things Tiny. My name is Mick. Scams happen in the tiny house industry all the time. Right now, there's a company making headlines for shutting down without a moment's notice and leaving tons of unfinished projects and customers in its wake. So today, we're talking about tiny house scams. We're talking about what a tiny house scam is. I'm going to talk about the company that's making headlines, and make sure you watch to the end because I'm going to give you 3 tips to help you spot a potential scammer in the industry. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. Let's get into it. Let's talk about tiny house scams. All right, welcome back. I've got my notes. Today we're delving into tiny house scams. This is an important topic. It's something I'm super passionate about. It's actually the reason why I made the channel, because I want people to be informed. I want people to make great decisions and have the tiny home of their dreams. But we got to talk about scams because there's stuff going on in the media about one particular company, and it's important to know how to spot a tiny house scammer. So what's a scam? Basically, a scam in this industry is just any situation where you don't get what's advertised. So there's several steps in the process for buying a tiny home. So for those of you who don't know or you're not familiar, I'm going to walk through those. At every one of those steps in that whole process, you can be scammed. So a scam can look like not getting the quality that you were sort of promised, the model's looking different than the product, it could be the price, it could be the language in the contract, anything. Delivery even is a time where you could potentially be scammed. So we're going to talk about these steps. So first step number 1. When you're interested in a tiny house, you're going to reach out to a company, obviously. You're going to pick the model, and you're going to say, this is the one I want. So now you're in the, I'm ready, and I want to buy this tiny house. You're generally going to have to pay a deposit. It can be refundable or non-refundable. I can talk more about that later. So now you're in the design phase. So you're going to agree on the design, and you're going to move over to construction phase 1. Typically, at this phase, you're going to have to pay more money. And then you do phase 2, you might have to pay more money, and then you do the final finished product. Maybe you get to do a walkthrough, maybe you don't. I guess it depends on the company. It's going to get delivered, and you're going to pay the rest of the money that you owe the company for your build. So at every one of those stages, you could get scammed on the design, the model, the deposits, the pricing, how much you have to pay up front, what's going on in construction, what you see versus what you get, the delivery, all of that. So it's important to know the different steps so that you can know what to look for. So we're going to talk about the example that I mentioned. So the company right now that's making headlines is Anchored Tiny Homes. So for those of you who are not familiar, Anchored Tiny Homes is an ADU builder based out of California here. They also build tiny homes, and they're making waves. There's headlines right now because they have officially shut down their company without letting any of their contractors or their current clients on their current builds know. So where they're at right now is they've issued an apology. They're planning to file bankruptcy, and all of those creditors and people they owe money to, the people with the partial builds, everyone's just kind of like left with nothing. The laws in California will allow people to obviously file claims, but how much money that they'll get back is right now, I guess it's like subject to their laws around bonds. I don't know too much about that, so I'm not going to go too much into that. But what I do know from what I've read is that it's unlikely that the families that file claims are going to see much money. So it's a huge problem for a lot of different reasons. So we're going to talk about we're going to go through their website. We're going to talk about sort of like what they're advertising, and then I'm going to walk you guys through how you could potentially spot a scammer. So with Anchored Tiny Homes, their website's pretty standard, right? It says that they're the leading builder for ADUs. They've got a section for who they serve. They've got a section for what tiny homes are as well too, about us section, family background. The family stuff all seems to be legit, and the website looks legit as well. So you wouldn't really be able to do too much at this stage in terms of potentially being like, oh man, they're scamming you. So, but I do think that there's probably language in the contract between Anchored Tiny Homes and clients that potentially allows for them to be scammed. So that's sort of my thought process on how something like this happens. The larger issue is with the entire tiny house industry. So in my opinion, scams happening in this industry are directly connected to the fact that this industry is highly unregulated. What I mean by that is that even though there's like international codes on sort of the sizing for tiny homes, and there are some fantastic organizations that are working hard every single day to increase legislation and standardization around like what it means to build a tiny house and things like that, and there's certifications as well too with NOAA. As of right now, anyone can make a tiny house company and just be like, okay, I'm a tiny house builder now. So you could just make a website tomorrow, pop some pictures on there, and now you're a tiny house builder. That creates a lot of problems. So as this industry continues to increase and it becomes more popular, I think the scamming is going to continue to be an issue. So that's why I think it's possible, in particular in this industry, because it's highly unregulated. So what do you do? So we know what a scam is. We know it can happen at any stage in the process. We've got anchored tiny homes as an example of what happens, I guess, maybe at the end of that process, where like now you've already paid, you've given your deposit, you've paid a certain chunk up front, and now they're building your home, but you don't realize that they're not actually building it, or they don't finish it, or in this case they completely just abandon everything and kind of ghost. We need to talk about what you can do to spot a potential scammer just in general, and I think there's 3 things that anyone can do to spot a potential scammer in this industry. And I'm going to use the acronym WMA, so WMA. So we're going to talk about these 3 different things I think you can do. First is with the website. First and foremost, it's the first thing that you see. So if you're interested in working with a company and they don't have a website, I would say not to pursue it. I can't tell you what to do, right? Obviously, you have to go with your gut. Maybe it's a family friend, you really trust them, but in my book, no website equals no deal. Because it's going to be hard for you to verify what they've done. It's going to be hard for you to figure out a lot of different things if there's no website. So use your best judgment. But for the most part, website, if they don't have one, you've got a problem. The second stage in, okay, now they have a website, you have to verify whether or not the images on their website are actually theirs. And I know it might be hard for some of you to imagine that someone would put up fake images, but it's the case for any other aspect of the internet and social media. So you have to use that same sort of like level of critiquing or skepticism within this industry as well too. So what you can do is you can do a reverse image search on Google for any images you find on their website. So if you go to a website and you grab an image and you right click it and you say save image address, you can then go to Google, pop it into the image search tool, you click on the camera, and it'll show you hopefully the root of that image's location. So I'll do this for Anchor Tiny Homes just as an example. I'll take their ADU photo, right click it, save the address, pop it into Google with the camera function in particular, and then you see all the different results that pop up. Now, if we're looking at this, you can tell there's lots of different ADUs that look like it. We're not worried about those. We're concerned about the ones where it's the exact same image. So for the most part, for this image, it looks good, right? You can see the ones that look a little different. That's not them, but the images that are of this particular ADU all go back to Anchored. So we can conclude that that's their ADU. They built it, right? That's what we're gonna go with. I'm assuming it's not a perfect science, but it's the best thing that we've got right now as consumers. So do they pass the website check? Do all their images theirs? Are they legit? Then you can move forward to models. Do they have models? If they don't have models, there's 2 things that could potentially be happening, right? One is they're new. Not every new tiny house builder has the funds to create a bunch of models and have them sit in a warehouse where they're not making any money, or they're not actually a legitimate builder. So that's another issue, right? So even if they don't have tons of models, they should have something to show you to be like, okay, this is something I've built. This is the very first tiny house I built. Maybe they're not super proud of it, but it's the first one they built for their very first client. So they've got something to show you. So models are key, and that's important. You want to be able to put hands on anything that they've created. Also with models, the other thing is that if they don't have models, you can see if there's other builds you can look at from previous customers. So maybe they don't have a model in their warehouse. Maybe their warehouse is small, but there's someone down the road that's living in the tiny house that they built, and they're like, okay, you can go check it out. Maybe that person's okay with you seeing it. Same thing for ADU builders. There's an ADU up the road. I built that one. You could talk to the owner. You could talk to them about their experience. You have the right to know what other people's experiences have been like with the company. All right, so moving on to the agreement. This is the most important part of this, in my opinion, because this is the place where you can experience the most scams, because it's a legally binding document. So once you sign it, there's not much you can do in terms of, unless you take them to court, that sort of thing. So in the agreement part, I can't stress enough, read the agreement, read the agreement, read the agreement. That's the first thing. Read it word for word, read it line by line. Make sure it feels right to you. Non-refundable deposit doesn't feel good to you, ask about it. The deposit size itself doesn't feel right to you, talk about it. The upfront cost doesn't feel good to you, talk about it. So if they're asking you for 50% upfront and you're not getting anything from that, they're just, you give me 50% and I'll start working on it, that doesn't feel right to you. I think 50% is too high in general, but I'm not a builder, so I don't know what's going on there with what the difference is between someone asking you for 25 or 30 or 50% up front is. But if you're going to give them 25% of the build up front, you should be asking for something in return. You should be able to do walkthroughs, in-person visits. There should be, constant not constant, but there should be, communication between you and the builder, like there would be on anything else. If you're building a house, you would want to talk to the contractor regularly. So treat it the same way. All right. So that's the agreement too. So those are the 3 points. So website, models, agreement. Why am I talking about this? First and foremost, I just want you to be informed. I also think that scams in the industry could go up because it's so unregulated and it's becoming so popular and it's such an attractive industry now that just leaves more opportunities for people to get into it that might not have the best intentions. And also, it's important for you to do a few things. So in addition to making sure you're looking at the website, you're looking at whether or not they have models, you're reading the agreement with a fine-tooth comb, you also need to start asking questions. I stress this at almost every video. At the end of every video I've done for Make Things Tiny here, I say to ask questions, but I can't stress that enough. You have to ask questions. You have to be really annoying, ask tons of questions, because you want to make sure that you're interacting with someone who knows what they're talking about and can sort of reassure you. Thinking back to the videos I've done with Sailor, Sailor knows his stuff, right? Like he can answer any question that you have about any of the builds. That's going to give you the peace of mind that you need to be able to move forward. So make sure you check out those videos if you haven't already. The other thing that I want to say is that you need to stop falling for the pretty pictures. I don't know if this is you. I don't know if of the people that are watching this video right now, there's someone in the group here that has fallen for the pretty pictures, but if it's you, please stop. Pictures can be filtered. Pictures can be fake. So the picture can't be enough. You got to go in and put hands on stuff, as I said before. You got to put hands on stuff they build, because quality only comes through good craftsmanship, and that comes by talking to someone and finding out what they know. The pretty pictures aren't going to be enough, and the pretty exteriors can fall apart. The last thing is if you know of a company that's scamming people, say something. I know that's tough because, we never know how people are going to react. And so it might not be a comfortable thing for, honestly, any of us, but in this industry, being as unregulated as it is, we kind of have to try to look out for each other as best as we can. Again, companies have no obligation to look out for you as a consumer. Their bottom line is their bottom line, and so you need to pay attention to it yourself. So if you don't want to talk about it and you know a company is scamming people, send me an email and I'll look into it and I'll see if it's something that it makes sense for me to talk about instead. So yeah, either you say something or send me an email and I will say something. All right, so I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to me. I hope this was helpful. Okay, so remember, website, models, agreement, check it out. I don't want you to get scammed. As always, I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys in the next one. Don't forget to think tiny.